So this video, I'm going to show you how to fill out a buyer's representation agreement and explain the IBS in such a way that it should get it signed. You should be able to get your buyer's rep signed all the time. I've discovered that this has been an issue for agents, especially brand new agents, knowing how to explain the information about brokerage services and the buyer's representation agreement in a way that will get your clients to sign it, so then you would actually have a buyer working with you and not potentially running off and working with another agent. So I'm going to start the process in Dotloop. That way you can see the whole thing from the beginning to the end. The very first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a loop, just as if we were working with a client. Whenever you're working with a buyer, you're not going to know the property that they want to purchase at the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to name it their names. So let's just say Billy and Sue Cooper, and hit create loop. Before I do anything else, I want to come down here and add my people. So I'm going to add them in. If they are already in your database, they will pop up right here. As you can see, this guy did. So Bill Cooper, his email address already comes in, and I'm going to assign him the role of the buyer and add person. Hit add person again, and then I'm going to type Sue Cooper. Doesn't look like she's in my database, which is a great example for you guys. So if she's not in your database, what's going to happen is when you put her into Dotloop, she's going to go right into your eEdge database. You're going to probably get a text alert and an email on your phone saying that you have a new contact. It seems exciting, but it's really because you just added her into Dotloop. So you don't really truly have a new contact. So I'm going to just make up a fake email as misscooper@gmail.com. And then I'm going to assign her the role as the buyer and hit add person. So now I have my two people there. Now what we're going to do is I want to come up here and where it says select transaction type, I'm going to go ahead and change that to purchase because they're going to be buying a home. Select status. It is pre-offer. And that's all you need to do for right now. Now, where it says folder here, I'm gonna click this little drop down box. I'm gonna hit rename, and I'm gonna type that as contract folder. When you're working with the buyer, you're gonna have two different folders in your loop. One is gonna be a contract folder, and then you'll add a folder later that says closing folder. And the reason is because if you look at the compliance checklist, which is right here, you have, for a buyer, you have my buyer purchasing residential, and you have closing docs for the buyer purchasing residential. So you're going to submit to compliance twice. Once you've got all these contract documents filled out and signed, and then after you actually close. So that's why you're going to have two separate folders in your loop. Now going back over here to Dotloop, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a document. To start working with the buyer, I need to take a look at this compliance checklist. Now, I need the information about brokerage services, the KW notice to prospective purchasers, the buyer tenant representation agreement, and then the CFPB that goes along with the buyer tenant representation agreement. So I need those four things in my loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit add document from templates. This is where all your contracts are. Go down to broker my buyer purchasing, and then you've got the Cfpb Addendum right here. You've got the information about brokerage services. I also need the buyer tenant representation agreement, so I'm just going to type as keyword right here into the search bar. And if I type buyer, there it is right there. And then the last one, it says KW notice to prospective purchasers. If it says KW in front of it, then it's going to be in front of, or it's going to be right here, this KWWD forms. So it is notice, there it is right there. And the other one, that addendum for the CFPB actually was this one. Let me make sure it's the same one. Yes, same one right here. Okay, so now that all those are in my loop, what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and rearrange them to the way I want them signed. So the information about brokerage services needs to go first. I accidentally just opened that, so I'm going to close it. So all I need to do is just drag it up and just make sure it goes into one of the blank spaces. And then the buyer representation agreement I'm going to drag up right there. I also want the notice of prospective purchasers next and the Cfpb Addendum next. And the only reason I have it in this order is just because the way I'm going to talk about it flows this way. So let's go ahead and get started by opening them up and assigning them. So what I mean is when I click on this, originally it asked me if I wanted to autofill because I've already clicked on it and I didn't do it the first time. It didn't do it. So what I'm going to do is come over here to all other actions, excuse me, and hit autofill. The buyer is Bill Cooper, buyer's agent. I need to select person. That is going to be me. Hit autofill. And then it automatically fills in my information right there. The only thing you need to fill in is your license number. So I'm just going to put a fake one in here. You see how it has that O with a little line between it? It means it's not allowing you to actually put anything there. So what you need to do is come up here to assign to buyer's agent and hit no one, and now it's a blank space. So if you have that issue, now you know how to fix it. Also, you see here how it just says buyer, it doesn't have initials. Click on that so it's green. Go up here and I'm gonna click on their names now. And there we go. I'm gonna go ahead and date it for the date that I'm meeting with them. Just that way you don't accidentally forget that. And then I'm going to hit save. When I hit back, it's always going to ask me, do you want to share it? I don't at this time because I want to make sure I share all documents at once. So I'm going to hit no. Now let's go to the buyer tenant representation agreement. I don't have a property address for them right now. So I'm going to go ahead and hit autofill. It does put their names here and their email addresses. You're going to have to ask them for their address and fill all that in. So I'm going to show you how to fill this in just a minute whenever I'm actually explaining it. But for now, what I want to make sure is that their initials are here. My initials are here. As you notice that it's orange right there, and if I hover over it, it says sign now. That means it's allowing me to sign it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit sign now. There's my name, my initials. I'm going to hit adopt and sign. There you go. And I want to go down here and do that to each of them. However, what's going to happen, and I just want to show you on the one, if I hit sign now and then save and come back into it in a minute to make changes, it's going to delete my signatures. So it's really important to know in Dotloop because if your client signs something and you go back and change that document, their signatures will be deleted. Okay, the KW notice to prospective purchasers, I'm going to go ahead and autofill that. Now this isn't anything that I actually have to fill out, it's just got their initials. With this one I can go ahead and sign. So I'm going to date it for today, go down here and sign it, hit adopt and sign. All their initials were there and their signatures are there, so that's good. So I'm going to hit save and back. And the very last one, Cfpb Addendum. Scroll down. You notice this one did not ask me to autofill it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to other actions, autofill. There's my buyer and buyer 1, buyer 2. Hit autofill. And there's their names. So now they can actually sign it. So I'm going to hit save and back. Okay, so let's actually go through these documents so you know how to explain them in such a way that you can get them signed. So the very first thing I'm going to want to show them is the information about broker services. And I suggest always print a copy of these documents and sit down with them and go through it with them before you just automatically email it for them to sign. I want to explain these documents so it's not something that they're getting, 8, 9 pages and signing but don't have a clue what they're signing, and most people would be hesitant to sign that many pages without actually knowing what it means. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down with them, have a copy in front of me, go through it with them, and then if we want to electronically sign it, then I can share it with them, and they can log into my computer or their phone, their tablet, log into their email, and then just sign right there. So let's start with the information about brokerage services. So when you show this one to them, what you're going to say is, this form basically just explains who works for who. You have the listing agent and you have a buyer's agent. The broker's minimum duties required by law is that we're going to make sure that we put the interest clients above all others, including the brokers in our own interest. We're going to make sure that we inform you of any material information about the property or transaction received by me. I'm going to make sure I answer all your questions and present any offer or counter offers that come to us. And then, of course, I'm going to treat all parties in a real estate transaction fair, honestly and fair, because we do want to make this a win-win situation for both sides. So just touch on each paragraph. I mean, I did read that one word by word, but the next ones I'm just going to touch on. So here, where it says as an agent for the owner, it's talking about when a listing agent represents the owner, they have a written listing agreement between the two of them that allows that agent to fully act on their behalf. They're just going to make sure that they negotiate to the best of their abilities for that client. They truly have the seller's interest, and they're working to their full capacity for that list or for that seller. Now, when as a buyer's agent represents a buyer, there's a written agreement between the two of them that allows that agent to represent the buyer. And again, they negotiate on their behalf. They put their interests first. They do everything that they can to make sure that they're performing best for that buyer. Now, when an agent acts as an intermediary, what happens there is, let's say the listing agent is a Keller Williams agent from the Woodlands, Magnolia, or Metropolitan office, and then I am also a Keller Williams agent at the Woodlands, Magnolia, Metropolitan office because I'm representing you, the buyer. What would happen then, our broker, Keller Williams, would step in between the two of us and act as an intermediary. That way each agent can fully represent their client. One good thing is Keller Williams, the Woodlands, and Magnolia, they don't actually let us work both sides of the deal. So that way you can have full representation. Now, what I do want to point out is this line right here that says as a subagent, because this is really important. It says, as a subagent, a license holder acts as a subagent when aiding a buyer in a transaction without an agreement to represent the buyer, which that would be that written agreement that we were talking about a minute ago. A subagent can assist the buyer but does not represent the buyer and must place the interest of the owner first. I really want to point that out because that's extremely important. As your agent, I want to be able to fully represent you and put your interests first. So wouldn't you agree? Wouldn't you rather me put your interests first above the owner's? If you ask that question to your buyer, I don't know any buyer that's really going to say no. So at that point, when they say, well, absolutely, I want you to put my interests first, then you say, okay, great. Then what we need to do is we need to sign the buyer representation agreement. So at that point, that's when you're going to pull out the buyer representation agreement. And we're going to go through this. So here, I'm going to say, okay, great. So this is the agreement that we need to initial and sign that puts me to work for you. And in the state of Texas, it's completely free for the buyer to be represented by an agent, which is great. So you're not going to have to pay me anything. So what I'm going to say is it's going to be an agreement between y'all and myself and Keller Williams. So I'm going to go ahead and put Keller Williams. You notice it says, because you're about to modify a signed document, a new version of this document will be created without signatures. That's because I signed it earlier. Now I'm going to change something. So it's going to delete my signatures. I'm going to hit continue. So I'm going to go ahead and put Keller Williams, the Woodlands, and put our address, 1401 KW, 1401 Woodlands Parkway, excuse me. The Woodlands, 77380. And then here, phone number, you're going to put your personal phone number and your email, and it actually autofilled with my own. So again, it's an agreement between them and yourself and Keller Williams. What this does is it appoints me to become your agent and work on your behalf. I'm going to help you acquire property in the following market areas, and it depends on where you're showing the property, but I usually put Montgomery and Harris counties. If you're going to go out to Katy or further down in Houston, Galveston, wherever you're going to go, make sure you put those counties. That way you're covered by this agreement in any of those counties. Now, the term, I'm going to say we're going to start it today. This is when I'm sitting down and having the buyer's consultation with them. And we're going to go out for, I usually go out for at least 6 months. It kind of depends on when they're looking to buy a property. If they're looking at 8 months, then I'd probably make it for a year. But if they are looking, let's say it's January, they need to buy a house next month, and they don't feel comfortable going 6 months, I mean, you can make it for 3.5, 4 months, because you should have them in a home by then. And if they're really hesitant to sign this, then what you could do is you could always say, you know what, let's just go ahead and make it for a week. At the end of the week, we'll reevaluate. And if you determine that you still want to work with me, and I determine I still want to work with you, then we'll just extend this agreement. It's, again, I would prefer to go ahead and make it out for 6 months, but if they just really, really don't want to sign this, then it shorten the agreement terms. So my obligation to you is just I'm going to use my best efforts in assisting you in acquiring the property in the market area. I'm going to make sure that we negotiate on your behalf, and I'm going to comply with the other provisions of this agreement. And your obligations to me is that you're just going to work exclusively with me and not work with other agents. That way I can fully represent you and truly be your agent working on your behalf. So I'm going to go ahead and sign this for myself. And then right up here where it says Bill Cooper and Sue Cooper, I need to make sure I put Keller Williams Realty The Woodlands. At the top of each page. Now, representations, just right here, if it says, if they are working with the relocation company, you would disclose that here, but if not, just put NA. Right here, I'm going to go ahead and check box A, which is intermediary status. And what that means is that I can show them any property that's on the market. If they said, no, I don't want intermediary status, meaning they don't want Keller Williams to be able to step in and act as an intermediary because both agents work for them, then that means you can't show them any Keller Williams Woodlands, Magnolia, or Metropolitan properties. Or if, let's say, you're with another Keller Williams, you cannot show them any Keller Williams properties that are with your same brokerage. Competing clients, this just means that I may be working with other buyers at the same time. They could potentially want to see a house that you're showing, I'm currently showing you. But again, there's so many houses on the market that doesn't always happen. Confidential information. Everything that basically you tell me that's confidential stays confidential between the two of us. So that means if you told me, you know, I want to offer $160,000 on this house, but I could really go up to 180, I can't go back and tell the listing agent that, and you wouldn't want me to. So by having this agreement in place, I am working for you and putting your interests first, and that stays information between the two of us. Now, without this agreement, technically, like that information about brokerage services said, I have to put the owner's interest first. So that's information you would not want to be sharing with me. So I'm going to go ahead and sign this now. Again, put Keller Williams Realty The Woodlands up here. You could probably also copy from earlier and just paste into that blank. Now, commissions. Typically, it's a 3% commission to the buyer's agent, so I'm going to go ahead and put that there. Right here, I'm going to go ahead and check this box and put 50% just in case they decided to rent instead of buy. Then I could represent them on the rent too, and I would still be covered by this agreement versus having to do a whole separate one. This paragraph here, I do want to go ahead and point out, it says broker will seek to obtain payment of the commission specified in paragraph 11A, first from the seller, landlord, or its agents. Like I said earlier, in the state of Texas, it is completely free for you to work with me. The seller pays my commission. It does say if such persons refuses to pay or fail to pay the broker the amount specified, client will pay broker the amount specified, less any amounts broker receives from such persons. So the main reason this is in here is, let's say you want to make an offer on a for sale by owner's house and they are refusing to pay any commission. then that's when we would ask you to pay the commission because they're not paying any, and that's why they're listed for sell by owner. Typically, we can at least negotiate my commission as the buyer's agent, um, but just in case we can't, that's why this paragraph is in there. Otherwise, any house that's on the MLS always has buyer's agent will receive a specific commission, and it's always paid by the seller. So my commission is considered earned and payable once I've got you to the closing table. Any additional compensation, I could potentially get a bonus from like a builder or even potentially a seller. And that paragraph is just saying it's okay for me to get that. Acquisition of brokers listings. This just means that I could work both sides. In the state of Texas, I technically can, but with Keller Williams, the Woodlands, and Magnolia, they don't allow us to do so. So this isn't really applicable. If I was being paid by a construction company or service provider such as Comcast, AT&T, if I was getting any kind of referral, I would disclose that here, but I'm not. So I'm just going to put NA. The protection period, that means that basically after this agreement ends, if I have not gotten you into a home, I have 10 days to send you a list of homes that I showed you. And if for some reason you go back to that seller and y'all negotiate for you to purchase that house without the agents involved, I'm going to be protected by a period of 60 days here. Meaning if you do that within 60 days, you purchase that home, I'm still owed the commission because it's one of the homes that I showed you to begin with. That's mainly in there because at some point the seller and buyer just decided to cut the agents out and made a deal on their own, and neither agent got the commission. Okay, down here, all amounts payable are paid in Montgomery County because that's where our Keller Williams is located. In the event that there needs to be a dispute arises and it needs to be taken care of, then we agree to mediate rather than take it to court. The party that's in default will end up paying the attorney fees. Limitation of liability just means that while I'm out showing you a house, and if there's anything that was to happen, like personal injury um, or something happened to your belongings, unless I physically caused it, it was my fault, then I'm not held liable. Just right here, these are the addenda that's going to go with the buyer's representation agreement. We already have the information about brokerage services. I also need to put in here KW notice to prospective purchasers. And the Cfpb Addendum. Now, as you can see, it's not going to fit, so I'm going to go up here and go to 8 point. And there we go. Special provisions. The only time you'd really put something in there is, let's say if you're representing a family member. Paragraph here, right here is just saying that broker's fees are not fixed, that we abide by the code of ethics. This paragraph is talking about that we are the agents, the real estate agents. We know the contracts, we know the market. We can negotiate on your behalf, but there are going to be other people that are involved in the transaction that are experts in their field, such as the inspector, engineer, surveyor, the mortgage lender, title person, appraiser. Those people are experts in their field, and so when we have specific questions that relate to them, then we'll direct those questions to them. This is just saying that the buyer is able to buy a title policy and a 1-year home warranty. However, in our contract, when we are making an offer, we're going to ask the seller to pay for those things. So again, I need to make sure I fill in right up here, Keller Williams Realty, the Woodlands. And right down here, broker's printed name, that's going to be Keller Williams Realty, the Woodlands. Our license number is 4677749. I'm going to sign here. I am a broker associate. And then my name is printed here. I've got their names, signature field, her name, signature field. Okay, so now that is all filled out. So what you should do is have most of it filled out before you actually sit down with them. But you may have to fill in like maybe their address and phone number whenever you actually do sit down with them. But for the most part, everything else is going to be just kind of standard information, except for when the date begins and ends, um, and the counties. So you can already have most of this filled out, ready for them to sign. Just fill in a little bit of information you say or you need, and just say, okay, to put me to work for you as your buyer's agent, let's go ahead and get this information about broker services signed and this buyer representation agreement signed. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to just say, okay, these next two forms are just, it's an informational sheet for you. This one right here, again, this is just saying we are the experts in our field as far as knowing the market, knowing the contracts, knowing how to negotiate on your behalf, finding you the home. But there are going to be the other people involved in the transaction that are experts in their fields. Such as inspections, the title people, you're going to want to make sure you take a look at the seller's disclosures on the property. We do recommend that you get a new survey, and the reason is it's for your protection. So when that time comes to make an offer, what I'm going to recommend is that you purchase your own survey, even if the seller has an existing one. And the reason is because once that existing survey transfers to you, it's still in their name. And if something was to happen, you found a discrepancy and you came back, you really don't have any grounds to stand on because it's technically still in their name instead of being in your own name. And there's things, if a fence fell down and was rebuilt, technically that survey is not really good anymore because that property is not in the exact form it was whenever that original survey was done. We're going to make sure that we verify square footage with the tax records. The utilities is just saying that we do have a business agreement with One Source Solutions, which is basically something that you can call and they can set up all your utilities for you instead of you calling each individual water company, electricity company, cable, all that stuff, and getting it set up separately. You will have to have insurance on your house, so whenever you're making that offer and get into the contract process and under contract, then you'll want to make sure you're shopping insurance companies. And then this is just some extra information for you to read. So again, you'll have them sign that. If they don't sign this at the same time as information about brokerage services and the buyer representation agreement, that's okay. You can still continue to work with them. Technically, they are your client now because they have signed this. If they want to take this home and read over it, that's perfectly fine. Again, it's just an informational sheet for them. Same thing with the CFPB. It's just an informational sheet for them if they want to take it home and read it. Your main two that you have to get signed right away is that information about brokerage services and the buyer representation agreement to go ahead and really start working with them. So the CFPB Addendum, all this is, it's an informational sheet, and it's just explaining what the new CFPB rules mean to them. And so it's saying as of October 3rd, now there's a 3-day waiting period that has gone into effect. And what that means is they have to have their closing disclosure and loan estimates 3 days prior to closing. If they don't get them 3 days prior to closing, then your closing date is going to have to be pushed back. It also talks about how some terms were changed, lender is now creditor, borrower is consumer. But the main thing is just that there has to be that 3-day waiting period. So this is extremely important to make sure that you have a good lender working on your side, because honestly, the lender is the one that drives the closing, and really they can cause the closing to run smoothly and actually close on time, or they can be the one that can really cause it to be delayed. So have a good lender that is diligently working for your clients, making sure that they communicate with them. Also make sure your clients are getting everything that the lender is requesting in on time. So with the new CFPB changes, you really have to watch those timelines and make sure that everything is lining up to get your clients to the closing table on time. Otherwise, you will have to extend closing. So basically, that's all that this says. And then you just have them sign that. And there you go. You've got those 4 documents signed, and now you've officially got a client, and they are officially represented by you, the agent, instead of you being a subagent and putting the owner's interest first. So that is how you explain the information about broker services and the buyer representation agreement in such a way to get it signed. Now, this is going to be a series of videos. So my next video is going to be on how to write an offer. So now what I need you to do is watch that next video so you know how to write an offer for these clients when you find them a house.